as an entrepreneur, you will reach a point when you have to sell your company, especially if you have investors backing you and they're expecting a return. So it would be good if you somehow have an idea before you approach a buyer what your company is worth. So there are multiple valuation methods that you can use to evaluate the worth and the value of your company. So let's dive in. There are three main ways in how to evaluate a company. First is the asset-based approach, then there's the earnings-based approach, and then the discounted cash flow. All three of them will give you a very different result. If you would talk to an evaluator, professional ones especially, that you will see that even if you talk to two professionals, they will give you two different results, even with the same method. So a good idea would be here is to try different ones and try to find the middle value for your company. If you would use now for earnings based, or if you would use now discounted cash flow, both of them will give you different results. And somewhere in between is somehow the real value. In reality, there is no really fixed value for a company because you're an ongoing enterprise and you keep growing and adding value to your customers and keep increasing in value. Sometimes maybe you decrease. It's a living organism, I would say. So that's why it's very hard to really nail the value of a company while it's running. The asset-based valuation method is simply the total assets minus the total liabilities you have in your company equal equity book value. So if a buyer tells I'm using this method to evaluate the worth of your company, be just warned that this is the least attractive one, because with this method, the buyer is not considering the worth increase of your patents, goodwill, and even real estate if you have real estate in your portfolio and that you have acquired many, many years ago. So there is within also the asset-based valuation also an adjusted abbreviation of this method, which considers the goodwill, the patents, and also maybe if you have real estate. So the good thing about it is that it's considering the adjusted value. So this is still better than the just simple standardized approach of asset-based valuation where you just subtract the liabilities from the total assets. It's actually considering the increase of your assets that you have acquired over time. And then, which falls also under the asset-based valuation, is also the liquidation-based valuation. This is only in case you are maybe liquidating a company and all assets you want to sell. What are the worth of these assets that you have acquired if you would sell them? So that would be the value of your company. So in this case, when it comes to the asset-based valuation, there are the three things I just talked about. One is the simple form, where you just take the equity book value. Then there's the adjusted book value. And then there's the liquidation valuation. The adjusted one is the most attractive if you would use this method. The next valuation method is the earnings-based valuation, where you multiply the earnings with an appropriate multiple. That multiple, if you're a private company, most likely you are a private company, you can take it either from comparable exits of peers in your industry, where you just compare the price to earnings ratio, and that will give you then somehow the multiple of your peer in that transaction and apply it to yourself. Or if you don't have peers who have recently exited, you take it from publicly traded companies who have somehow public information and they are also in a similar field. You will never find exact comparables, but you will find similar peers in the industry. And you can take that multiple then and apply it to your calculation. So what you would do is you take your earnings, multiply it with that multiple, and then you would get the equity value. Now, next, what you need to do here is to add the debt factor. The debt that you have raised through banks or maybe through an investor who gave you a loan. Because that loan helped you get where you are and grow the business, it's also significant for the buyer as well to acquire. So what you would do is the equity value, you add with the debt, and then you will get the total enterprise value. I believe this is a better approach than asset-based valuation because it gives a more realistic, comparable, and somehow more market-oriented value of your company. It's never 100% accurate, but it's better than asset-based because it's somehow considering the market factor as well. That's why using that multiple from other comparables. What would be good here when it comes to the earnings, to take the EBIT or EBITDA of your company, to see the true value of your company before the appreciation, before any kind of interest, depreciation, or amortization. That's very important to see the true performance of your company and multiply that earning part, the EBIT or EBITDA, with that multiple. That would give you a more clean result. Now, the last valuation method that I would like to talk about is the discounted cash flow method, where you consider the future value of your enterprise. I believe this is better than the asset-based and the earnings-based valuation because you have more parameters that consider the future increase of value of your company. What this valuation method does in a just simplified form is it takes the future value into today and tells you what is today the value of your enterprise in the next 5 or 10 years. So that's what you do. The hardest part about this valuation method is to calculate the cash flow in the next 3, 5, or 10 years from today, which is, of course, very hard, especially if you're a young company and you don't have a long history. Nevertheless, it's a very attractive method. It's used very often when it comes to acquiring, I would say, enterprises in many ways. So consider this valuation method as your prime method, but use the earnings base maybe as well to give somehow some idea where the value is. The value of your company is somewhere in between of all these 3 valuation methods, especially between the earnings base and the discounted cash flow base. So see which one is more suitable for you and try to find a balance. So when you negotiate, at least you have a range and you have an idea of what your company value is, and you don't have to derive. If someone comes and gives you a very different value, much lower than all these methods, especially the earnings-based and the discounted cash flow, be very careful. Maybe you're underselling yourself. But what's important is for you as a founder, you need to have an idea of these methods, how they work. You don't have to know all details, how they're calculated, but you need to know what they mean and how to apply them. I hope this was somehow helpful. If you have any ideas and comments, please feel free to share it with me. Happy to hear from you guys.